Welcome to What Works, where nonprofit leaders share real stories about what makes impact possible and their organizations thrive. Because success has patterns, and a lot of times the best kept secrets are not in the boardroom, but on the field. I'm your host, Marla Moody. I'm a transformational leadership coach, and after serving 3 decades in the nonprofit sector, I'm deeply passionate about seeing nonprofits thrive, and especially work that touches the human. I have the privilege today of talking with Christine. She both works full time, is a mother of a wonderful child, and from that started a nonprofit. So not only is she an executive manager of a territory, a board of education member, council member, she's striving to make a difference one patient at a time, one family at a time, one child at a time. Her nonprofit is Sun, Moon, and Stars and Company, with a mission to provide opportunities for families of autism with fun events and activities, while also providing support in a strong sense of community. Today's going to be a little bit different. We're going to do kind of a 2-part podcast. First, we're going to focus on founding of the nonprofit, the values and importance of collaborating with your local businesses and with other nonprofits in the community. After we close that section, we're going to continue to talk about the additional stresses of raising a neurodivergent child. So find the section that fits for you today. And always, please put yourself first. Take care of yourself and show kindness to those around you. So, Christine, welcome and tell us what works.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Marla, today. I'm honored, privileged to be here just to tell our story about how my husband and I started Sun, Moon, and Stars. So, my son Dominic is going to be 15 next month, and he was diagnosed with autism at age 3.5. And at that point, when he was diagnosed, my husband and I really didn't truly understand what autism was. All we knew that these kids were quirky, they were bullied, they had no friends. My son, he was just quirky. I mean, really, truly, he struggled with some sensory considerations and things, but for the most part, autism wasn't even something we were really thinking about. So when we received that diagnosis, we said, well, what can we do? The whole thought process of what our future was going to be and all the things has kind of shifted a bit. And how do we shift with that? And what do we do to help our son be the best version of himself? And that's really where we started the whole idea of Sun, Moon, and Stars back in the day. This was almost 10 years ago. 10 years ago, this happened.
Just to kind of frame it for people who might not have neurodivergence in their world, could you just frame it a little bit so that we have a bit of a baseline as
Sure.
we move forward?
Autism is a spectrum. Neurodivergence, that is the new terminology, and it seems terminology changes a bit. And you can say a person with autism or an autistic individual, and there's a lot of different preferences out there. And at the end of the day, Dominic, when you speak to autism, you think about levels of support. That's kind of the proper terminology these days. And he's right smack in the middle of support needs. So he does need support. And really, the social pieces of it all is where he really struggles mightily. He also has a diagnosis of ADHD and Tourette's, which if you meet one person with autism, you meet one person with autism. And when we say it's a spectrum, it's certainly not linear. It's very circular, and it's different diagnoses pop in all over the place. And every person is so truly unique. And I've had the privilege of getting to know about 25 to 30 families very well and their kids. And then we've had over the years, 100 more families fled in and fled out of different events and activities we've done. And I can really truly say we're all very deeply unique individuals. But I will say the sensory piece of it and understanding most, if not the majority of autistic individuals are very black and white. There are no filters. It's very black and white in their perception of things, and they take things very literally. And so you have to kind of change your frame of how you're working with them, approaching them, talking with them. And because they're so very literal, they don't really understand sarcasm. And they're truth speakers, my friend. And over the years, I've heard quite a few truths that were a little uncomfortable here and there. And so when, from a social perspective, we're all used to gauging every situation a different way. It's that whole idea of social emotional intelligence and, word things. So, we're not hurting feelings, right? And, feelings are a big thing these days. So, and they should always be taken into consideration. So it's really how you approach these individuals just a little bit differently. Been an experience, and I've met so many amazing families and amazing kiddos, and I wouldn't change a thing. It's just great.
When you think through, you were looking around like we need something for our kid. it's a pretty big step to go, let me find a friend to let me start a foundation.
Sure, sure. So most people that do know me know I'm kind of what you call a doer, and I like to fix problems. So sometimes it's to my detriment because I may look at a situation and be like, I know how to fix this, and my way is the right way. And my way may not necessarily be the right way. It's this level of persistence and a little bit of perseverance there. So my husband Mark and I, one of the things that we realized early on is, we had Dominic. I was 40 when I had Dominic, so we both had him later in life. And when you've lived your life and you do all the things that you're used to doing, and going out to dinner and doing things, going to different events, activities, all the things. And yes, we have a child, but we weren't looking to change necessarily our whole world. We were just looking to bring him into the world and, live our life and such. So Dominic mightily struggled with going out to dinner, going out to eat. It was just sensory considerations on a multitude of levels and sitting still. And that's where the ADHD and the things, it all comes together, right? So Mark and I thought, we couldn't be the only ones struggling in that way. And I saw something very cool online at that time. Listen, I give full credit where full credit is due. And is this gentleman who started an organization called Autism Eats up in Massachusetts. It was a way for families to get together, judgment free, get together for dinner. And it was more of like a banquet style setting. Like, he'd rent a place, like a banquet hall, and have families come out and all this stuff. That's a really great idea because this is something we're struggling with, right? We're just parents. So we're like, I'm not going to rent a banquet hall to do the thing. So Dominic's paraprofessional at that time, who we've become very close friends with over the years, worked at a pizza place in town. Anthony's of Oakville. So Miss Jen worked there, and I had this conversation with her. I'm like, "What do you think about this whole idea?" She's like, "Come down. We'll take care of the families. We'll do a thing, right?" So we started doing this idea of what we call a supper club. And when we decided to launch it, I said, well, we need to name this thing. For whatever reason, I really didn't want to have necessarily autism in the title because I wanted it to kind of have a little bit of a flux. But you had to bring in this idea of autism to it, right? At the time, I read Dominic's favorite book was I Love You to the Moon and Back. And it really hit me. Our kids are the light of our lives, our sun, moon, and stars. And that's really the genesis of the name Sun, Moon, and Stars. And we have the autism ribbon as the ampersand. So it kind of brings it all in. My very good friend, Abby Nelson, she's on our board. She's our marketing director, came up with the logo. And that's really how we started kind of branding ourselves a little bit back then. And it started as the Sun, Moon, and Star Supper Club. And we had local families because there really wasn't anything in this Watertown area. If you wanted to go to an event, activity, or something that was sensory friendly, you had to go to the local aquarium or the science center. There really wasn't any support group system, nothing that I could really see at that time 10 years ago. So we just kind of ran with it. We had 10 families come to Supper Club. So we said, what else can we do? And listen, I'm not an educator. I'm not a therapist. I'm a mom who just wanted to provide a community for these kids and provide friendships for my son and these kids. So we decided to really take it of the vein, let's do fun events and activities and bring joy. The world that we navigate in with all the different therapies, whether it's OT, speech, ABA services, all those things, it's time, it's money, it's everything, right? So we wanted to find a way to bring joy, also bring a support system together. So that's really how we started. And our very first collaboration that we did back then, beyond starting Supper Club and doing that, was holiday events. And we worked with a local farm here. It's one town over, March Farm. We started doing a pumpkin picking hayride for the families. And we started with about 30 people. And now we host this annual event. It has up to 150, 200 people that attend. And we also partnered with the Railroad Museum of New England, which is the Thomaston train. So we started the Autism Friendly Santa Express back in 2017. And that was one coach car with 60 people on that one car. And now we're actually hosting 2 full-time slots, 300 to 400 people at each time slot, and it's selling out each year, which is just phenomenal. And that partnership has gone so well that we've added in the last couple years a Pumpkin Patch Express that's sensory friendly and the Easter Bunny Express, which is also sensory friendly. And really, Marla, when you speak about neurodivergence and you speak about sensory friendly events, it really comes down to sensory considerations. Something that's not too loud. You don't have a lot like loud music. You don't have necessarily bright lights. The considerations are we're taking all the factors in as much as we possibly can to make it as comfortable as possible. But some of those things are also capacity. We work very hard to control capacities at our events so that it's not too overwhelming. I think that's important when you think about these things, and really judgment
Yeah.
free. We're here to support families. At the end of the day, that's the most important piece of it is how do we support one another in such a way that, your kid could be having a hard time, you could be having a hard time, and it's all good. We're here to support you and help you if you need it. and not look down on
Yeah.
you for that.
I wanna pause for a second and reflect to people that are listening, because we all have our areas of passion, or we all have something goes, "Man, I wish someone would do this." We naturally will see something that's missing. You
Mhm.
did with the passion of motherhood, of
Yes.
wanting the best for your child, and yeah, you're the type to go out and do it. It's that grassroots. Sometimes it might turn into a foundation and go big,
Mm.
but it also could be 1 or 2 other families. How would you encourage someone who looks around to go, "I don't have what I need here"?
Mhm. So I love that. And one of the things I've been working hard for the last 3 to 4 years is Connecticut's a very interesting state. There are a plethora of nonprofits, people that get up and want to do things and help and whatnot, and it's phenomenal. I actually started, it's almost like a, I would say it's a networking moms group of autism moms that make it happen, so to speak. So we've all started nonprofits in our different areas or do work within the autism community in such a like high level way. So I started, we connect, we have a group chat, we go out to dinner every once in a while and say, how do we help each other and support one another? So we're not
Yes.
competing against one another. And I'll be very frank, when we first started this thing, and we first became a nonprofit, I was so protective and so, I don't want to say ego driven, but a little bit of ego driven. Like, no, I'm doing this, you're copying me. I'm this, what, but it's you come from a different place until something smacks you and then say, wait a minute, this is not just about what you're doing in your little world here in Watertown, because not one nonprofit can be everything to everyone. So it's so important that how do we work together and how do we support one another when my friend in Torrington is doing an event or activity, when my friend down in New Canaan is doing an event or activity? How do I support those folks in some way? The whole goal of this and running any nonprofit with events and activities is really to provide opportunities for families, because what may work for one or two of my families may not work for another two or three of my families. We do a lot of fun events and things, but maybe it's not what their child likes to do. Maybe they don't like Legos. Maybe they don't like painting. Maybe they don't like sensory friendly movies. But it's all about providing these opportunities. And if we're all working together and sharing each other's opportunities and so on, it just makes it better for everyone.
Mhm.
And it's like a united front. I have a friend, she runs a nonprofit in down in New Canaan, Connecticut, Inclusive Together. So she met me when she's like, Chris, I really love what you're doing. Can you start a franchise down here in New Canaan? Can you start what you're doing up in Watertown? Can you come down here? And I'm like, girlfriend, I ain't got the time for that. But I'm here to support you. How do you get something started? And really it comes down to like your community that you're in and inviting people in, maybe doing a coffee chat or getting together, maybe working with your local school district. Do you have a SEPTO or a SEPTA? Like, is there, special education, or maybe even going to the school district and having a conversation with the special education director and say, listen, I really would love to do something to get some families together. Can we use some space in the school? Can we work together and host something? There's always a way. While I am a doer, one of my, if you want to call it a superpower, is I love connecting people and helping people get together. How do we help each other and support one another? I like to say a small but mighty nonprofit. This whole thing happens out of my home because the money that comes in, we want it to go back out to the fun events and activities. Not to say that, there's not overhead, because running a 501c3 is some serious business with the things you need to do to keep all the things together. When you partner with local service organizations or local businesses, it's positive for those businesses as well. So you're marketing not only what you're doing as a nonprofit to help families, but you're helping that business. And I believe strongly
Yeah.
in that. We do our support group meetings every month at Itty Bitty Cookie here in Watertown. Phenomenal place, coffee, treats, desserts. They let us bring some food in, some snacks for the moms and dads that come. And because of that, my families will go there to get treats and cookies because, oh, you support Sun, Moon, and Stars. Those are important things, and how we all work together and support one another.
That's a mindset shift you had from a little bit of competitive, which is normal and natural, to this switch of I help you, you help me, and that is what community is.
Yeah.
And we nonprofits, I know we're in some ways going for the same donor base, so
Yeah.
it can feel like competition. And in the end of the day, the collaboration and saying, oh, you're doing similar to what I'm doing. Good. Now we can branch out and have a wider girth or deeper. And I want to emphasize that because when we get into a poverty mindset, when we have a scarcity mindset, when we have
Mhm.
a competitiveness rather than collaboration, it makes all the difference. Because, like what you're
Absolutely.
saying, is you're collaborating with other nonprofits, you're collaborating with other places around your state and with local businesses, and everybody's winning. Everybody's
Absolutely.
winning.
Absolutely.
It's when we start taking our toys and playing by ourselves is when we degrade society, it gets softer instead of stronger.
Exactly. So I'll give you the perfect example. As far as your nonprofit is concerned, what is your focus? What is your bandwidth? What is your specialty? And I've made it a point, we do fun events and activities. That is what we do. We do adaptive sports, we do those things as well. And I bring resources in for my parent education nights and support group meetings and such. But I'm partnered with organizations. My friend Ashley McLean started the Linked Autism Safety Project. It's police, first responder training, safety packets, and a toolkit for families. We met because I had been doing with Watertown the Police Department. We've been hosting meet and greets for the last 7 years. So we bring our families in, do a meet and greet, and they had this online form that they use called the Wanderer Program, because that's a real concern in the autism community and disability. It's that elopement, wandering. How do you so we started working with them, and it was at the end of April, early May. Ashley had launched this whole new program, but it was all the things. It wasn't just a form. It was sensory kits. It was the form. It was a parent planning packet. It was training. It was all the things. So it's all four wheels, not just one wheel. So we're able to move forward. I reached out to her and I said, this is amazing. We just actually donated sensory bags to the Watertown PD through a small fundraiser we did. But we've been doing this thing, right? But I feel like if we bring you in, we can do so much more and be so much better for the community. And I say this because I'm not going to put a first responder program together. I'm not going to put training together. I'm not going to do those things. But that is the core of what her nonprofit is. We've partnered together over the years when people say, oh, we need something like this in our community, like, oh, you need to talk to Ashley. And since we started with her 3 years ago, she's now going nationwide and her base has expanded. And I say that because I wasn't gonna imitate what she was doing. I wasn't gonna like, "Oh, I need to do that too." No, I partnered with her because that's her wheelhouse. That's what she does best. I'm not gonna reinvent that wheel. Conversely, my friend Lauren down in New Canaan, her whole mission is focused on autism allies and working with school districts in bringing trainings and doing things. And so I've partnered with her here in Watertown. So we're actually doing an Autism Ally Day in Watertown Public Schools this Friday. And that's talking to the kiddos, talking to the educators, and just bringing this awareness. So I could have pulled things together, resources, and done it myself. I want to do that, but I'm going to bring someone in and partner with them so they can do it and we can grow stronger together because that is what their mission is. So I
Yeah.
feel like when you find ways to partner with people to do the good things, it really, truly, Marlon, I can't emphasize this enough. You have to play nice in the sandbox with everybody,
Yes.
and not everyone always does that. And I think if you pull back, and again, this was a growth and learning thing for me, and I was very transparent about it, and I made a mindset shift. I have to think differently about all of these things. And since we've done that, it really has been a moment of real growth for our nonprofit and the people that have helped us, the supports we've gotten, the donors we've gotten. And if I had money to give to a nonprofit and I saw that you were doing all these good things and working with these other people in nonprofits, and it really was about community, I think that matters because you're helping the community as a whole.
What type of tools do you have or do you need to really help make that shift in people's minds and help that sandbox to be a good place to play?
That's a deep question. For me, I really to look at an organization, like let's vet these organizations. Who are they? What do they stand for? Are they a mom and pop that are just doing something? Or is it a 501(c)(3)? Are you registered? Are you doing the right things? Because
Right.
I'm very concerned about our brand, right? What kind of person are you? What kind of organization? Like, if I haven't had a sit down conversation with you, if I'm endorsing or sharing your information, I know you as a person. I've met you, I vetted you. I'm like, I believe in what you're doing. And I think there needs to be a more mutual collaboration. My very good friend Helen Taylor runs another nonprofit in Waterbury, the Social Chase, in honor of her son. And she does events and activities for young adults. And she was very involved with Autism Speaks. We're actually Autism Speaks advocates together for a little while before we went full C3. She does phenomenal things in Waterbury, and she runs a really beautiful resource fair forum, and it brings a lot of organizations together. And we support one another, if we're having events and activities, we go to each other's fundraisers, galas, I send families, if I have young adults, people that want stuff for the older kids, I'm like, go see Helen Taylor. She'll take care of, she does a lot of fun things. And conversely, she sends stuff for us, for the kids, right? So again, it's your mindset, how you approach things. If you're a new nonprofit starting and you're like, I have this idea and we need to do this, and give a little grace to those that have come before you. And I think people should make an effort. Helen, I've seen what you're doing. Can we get together? Chris, I've seen what you're doing in the area. How do we work together? How do we support one another? If more folks thought outside of themselves and thought a little bit big picture, I think it'd be great. And not everyone thinks like that. And I go back to the fact that, we, I had a mind shift. So it's like, this is my baby. No one can take my baby and no one can copy. What do you mean you're going to do this? What do you mean you're doing that? We do this, we do that. There is not enough activities, resources, things for any family in Connecticut. How do we work together? And I think it's just giving a little grace, being humble, and like working together. For me personally, a lot of it is time. I get asked to do resource fairs and things. And if I can fit it in and it makes sense, well, I'd love to help and do it. But I also have to think about, is this an event that's our family's going to be able to attend my events? Like, what is this really for? What is the intent of it? I'm very blessed at this point that all of our events and activities basically are at capacity. We do some events where we can have 80 to 100 kids. We do some events that we can have 10 to 20 kids. And a lot of it has to do with sensory considerations and capacity. And that's why we really try very hard, Marla, to share other nonprofit events and activities so that families have as much opportunity to do things as possible. The whole mission of all this started with creating community for my son. And it's amazing to say because he's turning 15. And I said, buddy, where do you want your birthday party this year? He goes, the jump event, Extreme Air. And we do jump events there once a quarter and they're phenomenal. All right. So I'm like, well, who do you want to invite? So he gave me a list of 10 of his friends. They're all Sun, Moon, and Stars friends, and they're coming to his birthday party. And that is something that schools do a great job of trying to do all the things. But my son, he has a couple friends. They're Sun, Moon, and Stars friends from school. But he says to me, he goes, Mom, it's very hard to make friends. It's very hard to make friends. And I thank God every day, as hard as it is and as much time as it is to run a nonprofit, because I work full time, I still have a full-time job. Thank God I have a lot of flex and I have a very understanding boss and I can take time when I need to do the things like this morning. If we hadn't done this, where would my son be? Would he have friends in school? And I don't know that he would. And it's just because, kids are kids and it's hard. He says to me all the time, Mom, it's hard to make new friends because not every child understands as they get older, middle school into high school, what it means to give grace.
Yeah, I have a 13-year-old autistic friend, and we were talking about schools, and I said, "What would it like for someone to understand how your brain works?" And he immediately went, "It would be heaven. No one understands me. No one understands how my brain works."
Yeah.
And that guttural response of it would be heaven for someone to understand how my brain works. What you've done with your son is allowed him to be around other people who get how his brain
Mhm.
works. I wanted to highlight a couple things you said because a mark of a leader is not doing it all yourself. A mark of a leader is to be that humble and be able to know your capacity and to be able to have those conversations with other organizations. Does this fit? Are they legal? It's no joke that part of being a nonprofit is thinking through the legal. And so I just saw lots of elements of leadership. I want to get to you are working a full-time job and seem to be doing very well at it. But a mark of a leader is being able to raise up other leaders to take it. And where's that struggle for you of wanting to do it right and wanting to be able to keep this going, especially as your son gets older, so the age gap is stretching for your organization?
Yeah. That's the $1 million question, right, Marla? It's working with and bringing on good people. I have an amazing board. Everyone does their things, and I know if I say, I need this, I need this, I need that. They're there in a heartbeat. And unfortunately, it's sometimes almost easier just to like, I'll do it myself. I got it. And you just do the things, right? Okay. keepers, treasurer, it's having all the things, right? Having the right software system. You have attorneys, you have liability insurance, you have a board of director. Like there are so many pieces to this. That's where, you have to make sure you're crossing your T's and dotting your I's, right? So we had a conversation. I said, all right, well, this is the year of Chris really trying to push some things off. I didn't even mention really to you I'm also on the Board of Education in Watertown as an elected official. I'm on the Autism Spectrum Advisory Council for the state of Connecticut. So, being on different boards and things, it's like you really need to time block and
Yeah.
figure things out, right? I'm not going to lie, it's very much a work in progress. And again, I can't say enough. I've had the same job in different capacities for 25 years doing medical device sales. And, because I'm able to work from home and manage my schedule, it's been a godsend. If I had to work a 9 to 5 job, it would be very difficult. So I know as long as I do my job, make my numbers, it's all good, but it's also having respect. And if I need to take that time, I take that time.
Hmm.
I'm taking a day off, a full day off because I'm going to be in Watertown Public Schools with Lauren. We're going to do Autism Ally Day. It's going to be amazing. So it's these things that you have to really take a look at your schedule and time block as best as you can. But not to say, my husband is the one who grounds me and he's like, can you just stop? Can you just sit down and close the laptop? And I'm like, you're right, I do. And,
Yeah.
we really try and focus on all the sun, moon, and stars things, right? But we also need, family time. Like, where's the family time and what are we doing? So it's not just the business piece of it and learning how to delegate. It's also how do you just be present in your life with your family?
Yes.
And it's very hard for me. And I get, scolded all the time by both the men in my life, Dominic and my husband, to do better. And this is the year I'm going to try and really do better on all of that.
Well, I wanna be here to support you in that. Sometimes an outside perspective that allows you to see beyond the liability of a high capacity person is allowing yourself to get space for important things
Mhm.
that don't fit in that high capacity sometimes. And
Sure.
that push and pull of, "I could be doing more," and you're making such great input, but sometimes we lose some of those essence. You mentioned, a few things. If someone is saying, "I've gotten counseled, I know I have a passion, I wanna start a nonprofit," first of all, what advice would you give them?
Be very clear about your mission. Be very clear about who you are and what you want to do. Don't try and do everything all at once. You have to, I say if it's a slow burn, and you start off as a slow burn, you're going to build up to something really great into a bonfire. Don't start off like a gasoline fire and spray it everywhere and try and do too much too soon because you have to take the time to build your community. You have to take the time to grow and do the right things. So if I were mom and like, oh, I see my son needs supports, he needs community, he needs all this, and I really feel in my heart I can do something. I can make a difference. I'm a doer. I want to do something. I want to make a difference. Okay, so I would be like, who's doing what around me? Who's
Mhm.
okay, first of all, let me be very clear about what my intent is. Do I want to do something specific about autism awareness? Do I want to do community events and activities? Like my friend Ashley, it's all about first responder safety and that kind of thing. What is it very specifically you want to do? And be very clear about your mission and your vision and just start slow. Don't try and do too much. I look back, it's 10 years we've been doing this. Every weekend, we basically have something going on. We do sports, we do things, and I'm very involved at the Capitol now doing some things and on the committees. And, I'm very involved. It's not just about what Sun, Moon, and Stars is doing, which is great, but like what else can be done? Where else can we have some impact? But I didn't start off that way. Like, I started off doing the things. We did a supper club, we did a support group meeting, we did 2 holiday events, and we just started to build up. We didn't become a nonprofit fully end of 2018 because swim safety for autistic youth, it's so important on so many levels. So my son was struggling learning how to swim, and we went to a local organization like 2 towns over to do swim lessons and things. And it was specific for autism. The
Mhm.
instructors were great. The organization, there were just problem after problem after problem. Not to get into all that because they tried and they had great people, but it just wasn't really working out. And I said, "What can we do? I want to do this." Like I was very involved with Autism Speaks and doing their walks and stuff. And I said, "You know what? I need to take like flip it a little bit." And I said to my husband, "I think it's time to become a nonprofit, like legitimately." And he's like, "Are you serious?" I go, "Yeah, no, I'm really serious." So, because I wanted to start this swim safety program in Watertown, and, we need to raise funds for ourselves for this. Like, I need to, like, I was raising funds to donate to Autism Speaks, but we were still doing some things, and I said, "We need to, like, shift." And so it took 6 months to pull it all together, but that became the like, a big yes, it's about the community, yes, it's about things, but it became a bit more because swim safety is so important. So, we started the Starfish Swim Club. It's become such a huge part of what we do, since we started in 2019, and then COVID hit. So we had, a little bit of time off. I have a wait list right now, probably of about 30 kids on it. We've graduated about 30 kids since we started the program. And at any given time, we have 12 kids in the program. It's a very unique program where it's like a group swim, but it's a one-to-one with an instructor, and they're specifically trained to work with sensory needs of our individuals. When you kind of find your why and find your reason, you just really need to go with that. That's the kind of stuff when you have families to say, "Chris, thank you so much for doing this because we tried so many different programs and our kid never learned how to swim or this or that, and this has been life changing." And
Mhm.
if you can live your life with that passion and be able to make a difference, it's really a beautiful thing. Not just in the life of your child being a parent. I mean, that's like the ultimate, like making a difference. But it's just been a really amazing journey. I know you asked about where to start. It's really finding your why and just going with that piece of it. Start small and then grow into yourself. It's
Yeah.
bandwidth.
Where I've seen, teams fail or organizations wobble is a core value, which again is similar to a why, but a core values, and they have to resonate with you as a person, but
Hmm.
also with your organization. And those that work and volunteer, those have to resonate.
Yes.
If it's dissonance, so being very clear with your core values, which for you was having, that place for your son that
Hmm.
he can feel connected with people, and just that
Hmm.
value of connection, value of community, and that helps you build a clear message. And so I love to see how that's been traced through all of our conversations, and really important that start with that core and don't start too big, don't do the bonfire, do that
Yeah.
slow burn. I think we are naturally impatient people. I lived overseas where I had to learn a different language. I saw it when people would come over and they didn't want to take the time to learn the language. I
Sure.
love that concept of a slow burn and know your why. So that feels really important. Is there anything that you want to make sure people have heard if you haven't already said it?
So, I think it's important that you have in your life, you need to have truth speakers, meaning, I'm very blessed that I have a really strong circle of friends, both girlfriends and mentors, mentees, in the nonprofit space. And we bounce ideas and bounce thoughts and have discussions about things all the time. One very good friend of mine that has developed through my collaboration, with the nonprofit moms is Linda Jones is just amazing. She runs a group out of Newtown, Connecticut, Families United, and she's been doing this a little bit longer than I have. And we have conversations often about, "Well, Chris, have you thought about this?" Or, "What's this?" You have to have people in your life that will tell you the truth no matter how painful it is. And you have to have people in your life that accept you for who you are and will give you grace when you're having a hard time. We live in a
Mhm.
world where if we snap a judgment too quickly or we answer too quickly, we don't sit on things. And one piece of advice beyond having a tight circle of truth speakers is if you have to have an important conversation with someone, pick up the damn phone or do it in person. Do not text, for the love of God, the love of all things holy. I've through the years, I've learned a lot of harsh lessons in how to work with people and deal with people. And yes, there are things I could have done better, differently. And if I could have gone back and done things differently, I would have. And it's more about how the communication went sideways versus, did I do something wrong? And I think it was a perception of doing something wrong because we can all say and do things that are taken incorrectly. And you're like, that wasn't my intent. Please don't text. For
Yeah.
the love of God, have those conversations in person.
Yeah. It's uncomfortable though. That's why we
I
do
know.
it, right? Because the
I know.
texting distances, and I 100% agree with you. I started coaching way back when I was still working for a nonprofit, and I would a lot of times get the standard of performance people. And as I started working with them and figuring out, the rough edges and stuff, what I started realizing is the health of the team affected how well that person did, because a lot of
Eat.
times it was the avoiding of a hard conversation or talking behind someone's back
Yeah.
or doing it in email instead of in person or, like the whole thing of it feels uncomfortable to have a hard conversation. I guarantee you it's going to get worse if you don't do it right.
No,
I'll just text it. It will make it worse. If it's bad now, just multiply by
I know.
10, but then pick up the phone or go to
I
coffee or
I know.
whatever. So
Yeah.
those are really mature words that I wanted people to hear, Chris.
Oh, yeah. Listen, we don't grow when things are going well. We grow when things go south or pear-shaped. It's just that's where the real growth is because if we're
Yeah.
not constantly learning and how to do better and how to be better, what's going on? Life isn't always comfortable. I always say this even about our autistic population. My poor kid, I pushed him into so many different situations to get him out of his comfort zone. And I've done that with purpose because life isn't meant to be lived in a bubble. You got to
Yes.
push them. But you gotta know because how are they going to be able to pivot when they need
Yeah.
to as well? And that's a big problem.
And it's interesting because we're pushing them to grow.
Mhm,
And do we have that same willingness in ourselves? When you get in a situation where you feel uncomfortable or I felt scared, I would stop and say, feel this feeling, know what this feeling feels like. And I would
mhm,
take that and remember it and bottle it so that when I was interacting with someone who was uncomfortable at any level in real life, well, dude, it's just a person, just go talk to them. Or it's just anytime we use those words, sorry, I'm on a soapbox. Anytime we
mhm,
use the words, it's just, that is because you're in a comfort spot and they're not, and
mhm,
you're saying, "You just go and do that thing. It's fine because you're comfortable." Can we find times in our lives where we identify that discomfort and say, "Now that's how that person feels. What am I doing in my life
mhm.
to be in that discomfort spot?"
Yeah, absolutely. I get it 100%. Life
So,
isn't meant to
yeah.
be comfortable all the time. It's nice when it is, but it's
I
not
know,
designed to
it's
be that way.
lovely, enjoy it, right? We need those things too. I'm responsible for
Mhm.
myself, and so, as busy women, how do we make sure that we're self-regulated so that
Yeah.
when you're hey, so that when you're interacting with people I didn't mean
I
that.
love it.
So that
I
when
think
we're
that's awesome.
interacting with people, that we're doing it in a way that is benefiting them, so
Absolutely. And you need to take time for yourself too. It's time like my husband and I try and, do date nights when we can. It's time for girl time, going
yeah,
out with your girls, whatever that looks like. I've got a very good friend of mine, best friends for, 30 plus years, and we always go away a couple times a year for like an overnight. It gets you back to who you were, a little bit, and you can just be a little more frivolous with yourself. And I find myself getting a little as much as I'm very serious in most of my life, I find myself getting a little giddy and like goofy with her. And we just
yeah.
do goofy stuff. And it's nice to have the freedom just to be that person.
And I could see you going, "Oh, I can't afford this. I don't have time to do this. I can't do it." And yet you've chosen to do it. You have those times where
Mhm,
you can be with a BFF that you can be your
mhm,
crazy self. You can be that self that you can't be in other places. And
yeah.
so that's a great nugget that I'm glad you mentioned.
You have to take time. It's all about, it's trying to time bucket, time manage yourself as best as you can. And listen, girlfriend, it's a work in progress. It is an absolute work in
Yep.
progress all the time. The one thing I didn't mention is like how people want to take a look at us, sun, moon, and stars.
How do people find you?
Our website is sunmoonandstars.org, sunmoonandstars.org. And then our
Real quick.
Facebook and social media is Sun, Moon, and Stars Inc. is what it
Okay.
is. So they can find, yeah,
We'll
on social
We'll
media.
put that in the show notes too. Well, thank you for being real. Thank you for sharing your passion, also sharing things you wish you would have known better
Oh,
beforehand,
yeah.
and loved your insight on so many pieces. So, thank you for this time, and we will, I know, be in touch.
Marla, I appreciate it. Thank you.
So, we did talk about making sure that you're together with a good friend and having time to um, spend time with your husband and a friend. Um, we're going to shift gears a little bit, and if you're willing to listen on, just talk a little bit more about maybe the strains it is to have a neurodivergent child. The reason I kept this section in is to let you know that you're not alone. If you're someone who loves a child that doesn't maybe fit into the rest of the group, you're important. Your child's important. Your self care and that of your families is also important. One thing that's not talked about, but I want to be mindful of, is if you're a parent of a neurodivergent child or some type of handicapped child, if you have other children that are traditional, special shout out to them. They play a special and sometimes challenging role. So continue on, and we're going to continue to hear from Christine. So many good nuggets. That concept of collaboration. You work in full-time job. You're doing, just raising a son is a big deal, let alone
Mhm.
a neurodivergent son, and then the nonprofit and still trying to stay married. One we didn't talk about the level of stress and PTSD that
Mhm.
especially moms, it seems like, have
Mhm.
when you have an autistic child. And
Dads
also
too. Dads too. It's hard. It's
okay,
hard. My husband, if not for him, like, we're partners like in this life, and if not for him helping to do the things, it would be very difficult for me to do all the things that I do. And, trying to make time for each other is again, it's always a work in progress. But
yeah.
we've really tried now. Dominic is a little older so that we can kind of, do some things here and there, even just hanging out, going out with friends, that kind of stuff. We've been trying to really do a bit more of those things and just having some fun.
I'm sure you're very aware of the divorce rate. There's reasons for it, right? So
Mhm.
that you're a partner in this. And you're right. Yeah, dads, I'm sure, feel it too. I just interact with the moms more. We could have easily gone there, but I wanted to say a little bit more on the nonprofit. How do how do you as a person, what tools do you give to your parents to say, while you're at home, here are ways of regulating? I see sheer terror in some
Yeah.
moms when I talk to them because of just how things are going at home. Terror, one, that their sons will run away,
Oh, yeah.
terror of being too aggressive for them, not being aligned with their spouse, all
Oh, yeah.
those kind of
It
things.
is, it's a multifaceted thing, Marla. So that's why when I do my support group meetings, I bring in speakers to talk about a variety
Excellent.
of different topics. I have someone coming in and talk about puberty, like navigating puberty, right? I do at least 2 to 3 times a year. We do like a mindfulness craft or something. Like we
Excellent.
do something just to get together. I'll have someone come in and talk about navigating the school systems and IEPs and transition, the financial piece of it. There's so many different ways to slice it, but it's really about providing education. And we have a very vibrant community where I have moms of littles, 3, 4, 5 year olds to like 22, 23, 24 year olds people. So when they tell me it's not about your topic, it's what are you bringing to the table? So if we have that speaker in and then we're having a conversation, what is your shared experience? How do you help a new mom? So it's really about the collective as a whole
Yes.
in supporting the things, right? So we all bring something to the table. At the end of the day, I always tell my parents, I may not have all the answers, but I always know someone who does, and I can point
Yeah.
you in that direction.
We're going to end there. We have more conversation, and I actually had another mom of a neurodivergent son come in, and they had a nice discussion, but it was personal, so we're leaving it personal. Thanks so much for joining with What Works. Until then, take care of yourself, lead with confidence and compassion, and know that you're enough.